Merry Meet, as witches, we tend to be keenly aware of the energy around us, and energy fills all things in the universe, including us. So, in all living things, the energetic system is the foundation of our practices, of our well being. We can explore this through exploring the chakra system. Now, the root chakra is the foundation of that foundation. And the root chakra helps us feel grounded, stable, secure when it is working properly and when it's working optimally. But when our root chakra is out of balance, we may feel ourselves having trouble focusing, having trouble staying present, having trouble feeling safe and secure in our own bodies, and also difficulty grounding. So, as witches, one of the best things that we can do is to make sure that we have a healthy root chakra above all else, because this is the foundation of all of our energy in our entire energetic system. Now, this is going to make us feel better. It's going to increase our well being, our health, our physical, our mental, our spiritual health. But at the same time, it's going to help increase and accelerate our magical practices. So, Merry Meet, I'm Aislin. This is Ask Aislin. We're here tonight talking about the root chakra. So, if you're here with me live, welcome to all those who are joining us. Feel free to leave comments or questions in the chat, and we'll have a Q&A at the end. I'll also be kind of watching the chat as we go. If you're watching this back live later on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe to our channel, Body, Mind, Witchcraft, so you don't miss any future episodes. And if any point during the video you like what you're hearing, make sure to leave a thumbs up or a heart, and that just makes sure we can get this out into the feed of more people. All right, so I'm going to dive in. I'm going to start by just talking about the chakra system in general, just a brief overview, especially for those of you who don't know very much about it and are new to all of this. And then we'll look more closely at the root chakra. Hello, everybody. Hi. Nice to see you guys. I could see some people in the chat, Melinda and Misty, Mary and Amy. Hi, everybody. All right, so the chakra system is an energetic system. It's only one of many energetic systems, but it tends to be one that's quite accessible to people, and probably why so many people study the chakras. Now, the word chakra itself in Sanskrit means wheel of life or wheel of light. And so this speaks to this idea that our energy centers are vibrational. Now, some will tell you that they can actually see the chakras. Sometimes we can see that within our own aura. Other people will feel them. Sometimes it can feel like tingling. It can feel like warmth. We'll get into all of that, what it's going to be like when we're experiencing the root chakra in a little bit. Well, we have 7 major chakras and a plethora of minor ones. And these 7 major chakras are connected by 72,000 energy channels that are transversing through our entire body. Now, each of these chakras connects to specific intentions, specific energies that are important as humans or all living things, because all living things do have a chakra system. And these chakras also, because though they are energetic and we don't have physical tools right now that can measure them, they do connect to physical parts of our bodies called the plexuses. And these are bundles of nerve fibers. And the idea is that the energetic system and the physical system can communicate through these connections between the subtle bodies and these actual plexuses, which are the nerve bundles in our own physical body. So we have many ways that we can think of this chakra system. One thing you will hear a lot of people talk about is whether their chakras are open or whether they are closed and or blocked. And so I just wanted to take a moment to talk about what does it mean to have energy not flowing properly through the body. Are chakras ever really blocked? So if you talk to lay people, if you just hear it out in the world, you're going to hear a lot of people say, okay, this particular chakra is blocked. But the reality is that we never actually have any of the chakras truly blocked because they are just simply energetic. This is the pathways through which the energy flows through our system. Now, what does happen to many of us, and when people say I have a chakra that's blocked, what they really mean is that they have a chakra that has energy that's not flowing optimally through it. And I use this analogy all the time, but it's the most useful one. If you have a stream of water, you can kind of think of your energy channels as a stream of water. And if you throw a little pebble into that stream, the water is for the most part going to flow unhampered. But as we start to throw bigger and bigger rocks into the stream, what we're going to notice is that eventually the water has to divert around those obstacles and it starts to flow in a different pattern. So that's what happens with us. When we start to have some blockages in these areas, our energy is still flowing. Your energy is still flowing through your body, but it's not flowing as optimally as it could. And sometimes when the chakras are extremely compromised, there'll just be this little trickle of area where the energy can flow through. And those are the cases where we really want to dive deep in and look at these chakras in a very detailed way. But for most of us, we have one or two centers that has some compromised energy. These are the ones that we mainly want to focus on. So just important to note that chakras themselves are probably never really closed, even though we might use those words to describe them. Now, I'm going to dive in and actually, before we talk about the root, let's just talk about Carl Jung, who said that the chakras were the gateway to consciousness. So he actually thought that we could use the chakra centers to communicate with our unconscious and our collective unconscious. And this is really important to us as witches. Those of us who are interested in shadow work will find this very interesting as well, because in shadow work, in all of that internal work we're trying to do, we're trying to get down into that unconscious mind to find out what's buried below the surface, the things that we can heal, the things that we can draw up to the surface to shine some light on, perhaps things that we've forgotten or we never really knew, we never had any chance to know. And so he believed that the chakra system was a way that we could access that information. And so in my honest opinion, I feel that all witches, empaths, spiritually minded people, anybody who's trying to elevate themselves in some way, which is a lot of us here, I think we should all have some kind of daily or almost daily energetic practice that we're doing, just as we would exercise our physical bodies, right? We know that physical exercise is a key to long-term health. We also want to exercise the energetic body, and that's what these energetic exercises are, and the focus that we put on it. So there are a couple of different ways that we can look at the energetic system. In one way, we can look at it as a whole. We want to try to find balance within the entire system. And so sometimes when people first come to the chakra system, that's a good thing for them, is to just look at each one in turn and see if they can balance the entire system at once. Other people will know that they have deficiencies in certain areas, and they will want to focus on that specific chakra or set of chakras. And so I will tell you is that from working with a lot of people over the years in my own private coven, in Body, Mind, Witchcraft, and our Shadow Seekers membership, it's very eye-opening to see how many people have root chakra issues. This is why we're starting here today talking about the root chakra, because it's one of the main ones that people need help with. Now, there are multiple things that we can do to work with the energy of the chakra system. So I'm going to talk about that in general, and then when we get into the root chakra, we'll talk about it more specific to that center. But things that are going to move the energy through your energetic body are things that are going to help work on the chakra system. So one main thing is breath work. So for anybody who's never done breath work before, it's a great time to start it, especially if you're interested in working with the chakras. And so at the end, I'm going to show you a breath or two that you can use for the root chakra. It will also be good for other ones as well. But that's a great way and a simple way to get started. Now, the word pranayama is the Sanskrit word for breath work. Prana means life. And so literally what we are doing when we're engaging in breath work is we're actually bringing life energy into the body to be used in the body, to be distributed to the energetic centers. And then when we exhale, we're basically expending some of that energy out that we've used. So this is why breath work is so important and can really be a game changer for witches. When I started really getting serious about it, a lot of things in my life began to change. Now, another thing that we can do to balance the energy in the energetic system is mantra. And mantra is, depending on how we look at it, like a lot of what we talk about in the West, when people say, I have a mantra, a lot of that is what is probably called an affirmation. And these are sentences in English that we are trying to, or our native tongue or native language, that we are trying to bring into our lives or perhaps get rid of. And they're intentions that we set, and we repeat them over and over, and especially if we're in a specifically induced and relaxed state, they can have profound changes on our energy and on our thoughts. Now, mantra itself, typically, if we're really talking about it from the definition, tends to be Sanskrit mantras, which are using Sanskrit, a language that has vibration as well as meaning. And so the sounds that are put together are designed to change the energy in the body very, very precisely and specifically. So at the end, I'll also be sharing a mantra that you can use, actually two mantras that you can use for the root chakra. That's another way to move energy through the body. And then simple, pure living is one, eating well, exercising, especially for the root. When we get in and start talking more about it, we're going to find that that's all about the physical. So if your physical health is not optimal, if there's things that you could be doing to improve that, then you probably have place to improve the energy of your root chakra as well. Other things we can do are kriyas. Kriyas are movements that we do that are designed to change the energy of the body. I'll show one of those at the end as well for the root chakra. And then there's something that's just simply called the Guru's Grace, which is the surrendering to the universe, surrendering to our life path, not trying to fight against it, really being open to our higher self and elevating ourselves out of that physical realm that we're in. And these are ways that will help just simply balance the chakra when we're on a pathway like that. Okay, so let's dive into the root. And then again, if anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat here, okay? And let's just dive in. Okay, so the root chakra is the foundation of the entire system, like I said. Now, the root, it's in Sanskrit, the word for root is Muladhara. It means root support. Now, the root is located at the very base of your spine. So you can think about the tip of your tailbone, the perineum. This is where the root chakra is located. Now, it connects to the coccygeal plexus. So I talked in the very beginning about how each chakra, each energetic center is going to connect to a physical part of the body, and that's the part it connects to. And it also relates to the lower lumbar vertebra. So we'll talk in a moment about signs that your root chakra is in balance, but one sign is low back pain. If we have some low back pain, there tends to be some kind of compromise in that energetic center as well. Now, if we don't balance the root, what we are likely to find is that our growth feels rootless. So we can connect up to those higher chakras, but if we don't have that foundation, it's going to feel like leaves blowing in the wind or feathers blowing in the wind. And here's why we feel, at least I feel, and many people who write about this feel, that the root is such an important chakra is because so many of us who are on that magical and that spiritual path, we're up in the head a lot of the time, right? We're connecting to spirits. We're connecting to our deities. We're connecting to the universe, the spiritual realm. We're tapping into our intuition, our psychic abilities, our dreaming, things like that. And so we're up in this part of the energetic system all the time. And so we forget sometimes that we also need to ground down. So just think about the tree that is growing. It's going to put its roots down before it's going to lift its leaves and its branches up to the sky. Now, the root chakra relates to our physical bodies, our health, our survival, and all of our basic needs. So if any of those things are not met, we're going to have issues with the root chakra. If any of those things were not met when we were children, we're going to have issues of the root chakra that we're then going to bring in later with us into our adult life. Now, if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so Maslow has a hierarchy of needs. If you've never heard about it before, it looks like a pyramid. And in that pyramid, we have different levels of the things that all humans need. And at that very, very bottom, it's the biggest part of the pyramid, is our basic needs. Like we need air to breathe, we need water to drink and food to eat, we need a place to live that we feel is safe and secure. We're going to need some kind of bringing in some kind of energy of income, right? Whether that is wherever that's coming from. But we need all those basic things. And if we don't have those things, well, it's going to be harder for us to get up into these higher centers. So what you may notice is maybe you have those things most of the time, but every once in a while something comes along and it kind of tips you off kilter. For example, someone losing their job or being faced with an apartment or a house that they have to move out of. Maybe someone's selling their house that they live in. The owner is selling the house. And so you and the person who's renting from it has to move out. Or there could be, like we mentioned, financial issues with losing a job, abusive relationships, not feeling safe in your household, having neighbors who are threatening to you. All these things can tip us out off kilter, out of a place where we felt balanced and now we don't feel balanced. So whenever we notice those things happening, this is where it's time for us to draw our attention back to the root, back to that energetic center. Now, our root also has to do with our physical bodies, like I mentioned. So anytime that we are compromised in any area that contributes to the health of the physical body, we're going to have a compromise in the root. So one thing that happened for me is running my business and also working a job, full-time job, is very hard. This is like 80 hours of work I do each week. And so there was a time back last spring when things were really getting out of hand and I wasn't sleeping very much. I should say actually from last winter to last spring, I wasn't sleeping very much, probably wasn't eating enough food or the right kinds of foods. And my body just became very, very compromised. And what happened is I began to have issues with my teeth and my gums, to the point that the dentist told me if I let this all continue, that I would lose my teeth. They were just I was gonna lose more and more bone, and I was gonna lose my teeth. And now the interesting thing, and we'll learn about this a little bit more later when we talk about the parts of the body that are related to the root, but one of those parts of the body are all the bones and our teeth and our gums. And so my lifestyle that I was living that was very ungrounded, not really taking care of my physical body as much as I should have, led to these physical issues. So when we are noticing a lot of those physical issues in the body, or we're noticing there's issues with our eating or with our sleeping or with our ability to move, we really want to bring our attention back to that root. Now, each of the chakras vibrates with a specified color. The root chakra is usually visualized to be red. Red is the longest wavelength there is. And this is kind of interesting to think about because a lot of times when we think about the color red, we think about it as being very activating, right? They tell you if you want to pep up your room, put splashes of red or paint one of the walls red or something like that. But the interesting thing is that red actually has the longest wavelength, which means that it has actually the least amount of energy. It's the lowest energy of all the wavelengths in the color spectrum. And so when we are aligning ourselves to that color, we're actually slowing our vibration down, which is quite interesting. Now, the root chakra is also the first chakra that develops as we are developing as babies and children. It's the first chakra that develops in the womb, in fact. And so what we know is that many of the compromises that we have with that root chakra may have their origin in our early childhood or even our infancy. So if we have a lot of issues from early childhood and early infancy, likely the root chakra is going to be one that we want to pay attention to. All right, so another thing that we should also mention about the root chakra is Kundalini energy, because I talk about it a lot, and I know that as witches, you'll hear other people talking about it as well. So Kundalini energy is serpent energy of the body, and it's thought to lie dormant in the root chakra in most people. So in most people, it's dormant. Now, there are ways that you can get that energy to move, and a lot of it has to do with training through specified breath patterns. I talked earlier about kriyas, which are these movements that are designed to change the energy in the body. So these can get that energy moving. And that energy, we think of it as Shakti energy. So it's energy that's infused with the divine feminine. And what it does is it aspires to join with the Shiva energy, which is outside of us, out in the universe. And so we can move that energy up and down the spine. And there's times, though, people will experience what a Kundalini awakening is, or a Kundalini experience is when that energy begins to accelerate and rush from the root chakra all the way out through the crown and out into the universe. And many people who experience this say that it feels like like a merging of the divine feminine and the divine masculine, or a merging of the self with the universe. And in those split seconds, time and space no longer exist. The person's uh, idea about themselves no longer exists, because we're just simply one with the universe. And so these experiences are few and far between, and they don't happen to everybody a lot of the time. But if you are working with your energetic centers, you are more able to move that Kundalini energy through your body, and you are more likely to experience one of these Kundalini awakening experiences at some point as well. Survival is a goal of the root chakra: security, stability, groundedness. And what we find is that fear is the opposite of that. So fear is what they may call the demon or the challenge of this energetic center. So this is where all of our deepest fears are housed. And when those fears are coming to us, it indicates that the chakra, the root chakra, may need some work at that time. So there's a lot of things that we can notice in our emotional lives, in our physical lives, that are going to indicate to us that the root needs some work. So one of those things is kind of think about your feelings about being here in general. Do you feel that you deserve to be here? Do you feel that there's a place for you? Do you feel that you are at home in your body? So if you answer no to any of those questions, or you have kind of a kind of a yes no kind of answer to it, again, that would indicate that the root chakra is something that you want to work on. People who have abandonment issues, anybody who's abandoned at any point in their lives, especially in early childhood, but at any point in their lives, that's going to affect the root chakra. So each of these things will affect the energetic system in some kind of a subtle way, and some in greater ways than others. But as they start to stack on top of each other, they compound the compromising of that energetic center. People who have experienced birth trauma, so these would be some things to think about too, is if you've ever experienced any birth trauma, or you did experience birth trauma that you know of, if you grew up in a household where there wasn't very much physical touch, or you had feeding difficulties. So if you have your caregiver, if your caregiver is still alive and you don't know the answers to these questions, you could ask. You could ask about, do they remember if you had feeding issues, if you had I mean, they probably wouldn't say if there was lack of physical touch, but you might know from your memories of growing up too. Were you hugged a lot? Was there a lot of touch? And if there's not, then that can compromise the root chakra. Other things would be any surgeries that you had, especially as a young child, or physical illnesses as a young child. That's already setting the stage for our root to be a little bit weakened, and us to need to work on this, or address this chakra, or put this as one of our focuses. Any accidents, but these also, this doesn't have to be from early childhood. Anything that happens in your adult life, any accidents, any surgeries, any physical abuse as an adult, is going to affect this system the root chakra as well. So I mentioned in the beginning that when we talk about the word blockages, when we say a root chakra is blocked, we don't necessarily mean that there's no energy flowing through it. I think a better way to think about the energy of all of the chakras is whether our energy is deficient, or whether our energy is excessive, or whether it's balanced. So we're always trying to come back to balance. but we kind of swing in that spectrum to one side or the other. And it's actually really common when we have the root as one of our areas of work. It's very common to be excessive sometimes and deficient other times. So, what would a deficient root chakra look like? Well, it's usually going to look like, one thing we can do is we can simply look at the person's body, the way they present themselves. And people who have deficient energy of the root chakra sometimes pull inward. So, if you notice that your shoulders are sloping downward, like crossing the arms like this, really trying to make the body smaller than it is, this would be a sign that your root is needing some work. So I even notice it in my own self is that sometimes I notice I'm kind of sitting like this, and that can mean that I need to kind of open up. I need to take up more space. I need to be bigger than I'm making myself to be, right? Other things that we may notice when people have a deficient root is that they feel very restless. So the energy, there's a lot of moving energy, and they can't sit still. So a lot of these things are actually symptoms of ADHD, and but it doesn't necessarily mean that if you're ADHD, you have an issue with your root chakra. But people with ADHD, I work with a lot of students who have it, and I know that if we can find ways to ground, it doesn't have to be the traditional things we think, like meditation or things like that. But if we could just find ways to ground, we could bring some of that scattered energy down, and it will help. If we have the need to kind of shift the body a lot, it's a sign that perhaps the root needs a little bit of work. But see, the movement that we do when we shift the body around can actually help, because it's physical movement is tied to the root chakra as well. Anybody who has poor circulation tends to have some issues of the root. If you find that your feet are really cold or your hands are really cold, that is a sign that we need to get some energy of that root moving as well. Now, other times we may find that there's excessive energy in the root chakra. Now, excessive energy looks more sluggish. So the inability to get up and move. So think about when there was deficient energy, the person's probably moving too much, and when there's excessive energy, they're probably not moving enough. So feeling sluggish, feeling tired, feeling like excessively heavy in places, that can be a sign that we have too much root energy there. Hoarding would definitely, the need to kind of gather in lots of things that we don't necessarily need, overspending, overbuying things, to have more and more of things. This can be a sign that something's compromised in the root that's making us need have this desire to bring in all these material things. Rigid boundaries, not being able to be flexible, that can be a sign that we have excessive energy in the root chakra. And so when that's the case, then the root is going to respond more to movement, probably. Now, when we're balanced, when we find the energy is balanced, and that's what we're all seeking to achieve, the balanced root is solidly grounded. We feel comfortable in the body. We have a healthy distribution of our energy, so we're energetic at the right times, and we're able to sleep and wind down at the right times. We may find an ease with both expansion and contraction. So there's a lot, like we're moving more into that flow state, which brings us up into the sacral chakra, which we'll talk about probably next week. We find that we have better health, we have trust in the world, we feel safe and secure. And we have the ability to relax and be still. And then we also find that we are able to open up to the energy of prosperity more. So that is another issue with the root, is that when we do have a compromised root, we may find that financial matters are on our minds a lot, or there's a pattern of financial issues that threads through our life. That would be a sign that the root chakra is one that we want to focus on. So if you are in our Shadow Seekers membership, we go into much greater detail about the root chakra. So people who are really interested in the chakras may find that membership is a good fit for them. I am going to talk, though, about the correspondences, a little bit about the correspondences of the root, and then I want to give you guys a few exercises and things that you can do to kind of work with your root, and then we'll take some questions in the Q&A. So correspondences are always really important to witches. I think that as witches, we have a unique ability to work with our energetic centers and system in a way that other people don't. So a lot of other people will focus really only on the physical and perhaps the mental, but we actually can focus on the ritual aspect and the spiritual aspect of all of this. So you can actually create a ritual, or you could create an altar, or you could create a spell, or different various things with your magic that will help you attune yourself to the energy of the root. So the correspondences of the root, each chakra, well, not every single one, but many of the chakras have a element connected to them. And the element connected to the root chakra is earth. So whenever you're working with the earth element, then you are also working with the root. So that's great to know, right? Because that's one very accessible way for witches to work with their chakras, is work with their elements. Now, as we mentioned, the function of the root chakra is survival and grounding. And so those would be intentions that we could bring into magical workings and spell work, money magic, prosperity. These would all be tied to the root chakra. So security, like we said, survival, anything for looking for a job. The body parts that are connected to the root, so healing of these body parts through healing rituals or Reiki, legs, feet, bones, like I mentioned, teeth and gums. The large intestine is also connected to the root. The low back, also connected to the root. Now, physically, if we see some of these things out in our lives, these physical manifestations, these can be physical manifestations of the root. Weight problems, and this could be too much weight or not enough weight. Eating disorders, very much connected to the root. I had an eating disorder. I started with an eating disorder when I was 12, and a very, very serious one that went on for decades. And so I know that from all my energetic work, I know that my root very compromised, and I've had to work on it for years in order to bring it back into balance. It's one that I'm always working on. And that is something, just an aside here, is that it's important to manage our expectations about energy work. It's not like you are going to do a couple of breath patterns for a few days and balance your root all of a sudden, especially because much of what it takes to get these centers out of balance is decades of things that happened, or trauma from years and years and years ago that's going to take longer than a couple of days to correct. So I always want to say that, because you want to manage your expectations as you go into this kind of work. You will see changes right away when you really sit down and you start doing almost a daily practice and really focusing on your energetic centers. You will see almost immediate change. Will you heal all of those issues from childhood and all that trauma in a short amount of time? Probably not. And so you may need to cycle through the work over and over and over again. So I'll do sessions of, I'll kind of pick a month, and I'll be like, this is a month to work on the root. And then I'll make a lot of headway there. I'll make a lot of gain. And then I may find 6 months, 7 months later, I'll start to see symptoms in my body that tell me, or symptoms in my emotions that tell me that the root needs some more work, and then it's time to work on it again. So just know, you may spiral through, you may do cycle after cycle after cycle of this work, and that's okay, and that's actually normal. So it's just important to normalize that. Getting back to other malformations or malfunctions or manifestations of root chakra issues, hemorrhoids. So things that are happening with the low part of the body. Constipation, sciatica is a big sign of root chakra issues. Knee problems, so anything with the legs, degenerative arthritis. So if you feel like you have issues with your bones, with your joints, things like that, it can be a sign that we want to do some energetic work here with the root. Now the color we mentioned was red. You can work with the color red. Every chakra is connected to not everyone, I should say, but some of the chakras are also connected to suits of the tarot cards. So pentacles, so working with pentacles cards, that earth energy, that can connect us to the root. Now the planets that are connected to the root are the Earth and Saturn. So working with either of those planets, bringing those planetary energies into our magical practice, those are other ways to work with the root. We can also work with the root chakra, any of the chakras, through food as well. And so one of the things that we can do is bring in foods that are high in protein and foods that are especially grounding. Those foods like root vegetables, especially grounding, like soups. We are recording this for anybody who watches this back later. This is being recorded right as we're transitioning into Mabon season. So we just passed over the autumnal equinox. And so we're moving into the part of the year where our energy does start to slow down, and we can find better grounding through foods like soups, warm foods like that, root vegetables, like I mentioned, protein. Incense that's very good for the root chakra is cedar, if you can find cedar incense. Stones, any stones that are red, I especially like garnet and bloodstone. Those are two of my favorites for the root. The lodestone is also very good, and ruby. Ruby with zoisite in it, with the green part, also connects the root to the heart chakra, which is a very unique combination. And many people who have root issues find they also have heart chakra issues. And so ruby's a very good one. Now, there are different deities that we can work with. So as witches, we like to know about the different deities and their energies. Now, the deities are usually separated into the Hindu pantheon and then all other pantheons. And that's just because the chakra system comes from India originally. So the deities connected here are Brahma and Ganesha. Ganesha is one of my patrons and one of my absolute favorite deities of all time. And they say that Ganesha resides in the root chakra of all people. So if you want to work with your root chakra and you work with deities, he would be a great one to work with. And he's very easy God to work with, very jovial and loving, and very accessible. Now, other deities, any deities that are connected to the earth. So Caradwin, Pachamama, Gaia, Damazi, Tammuz, Atlas, Erishkigal, Persephone, goddesses that also descend into the underworld. Any god or goddess that's connected to the earth is going to also connect us to the root chakra. All right, so let's talk a bit here at the end before we do the Q&A. Let's just talk briefly about some practices that we can use when we want to work with our root chakras. So maybe you're sitting here listening to this and you already knew you had some root chakra issues. Maybe this is new to you, and as you're listening to it, you're like, okay, I feel like I probably have some after I've listened to what the issues are. So what can we do? Well, one of the best things we can do is ground. So if you feel that you don't have a lot of grounding, it's important to figure out how to find a grounding practice. Now, this is going to look different for everybody. The grounding tree meditation works well for a lot of people. This is just simply where you can find a lot of guided ones online. Just Google grounding tree meditation. You'll probably find one. If anybody here is in Shadow Seekers membership, we have a grounding tree meditation in the membership portal and the alignment practices. Now, you can also just do the grounding tree meditation yourself. You can close your eyes and you just imagine roots coming out of any part of your body that's touching the earth, whether it's your seat or your back, your feet, and just imagine those roots growing down into the earth, anchoring into the earth. And then from there, you can begin to breathe in and out with the earth. So every inhale, you will bring energy up from the earth, and every exhale, you'll just let that energy go back down into the earth. And if there's stuck energy, if there's negative energy in your body, you can just release that with your exhale and just know that the energy of the earth can recycle that negative energy for you. So grounding tree meditation, very good. Take off your shoes. Try the grounding tree meditation while standing up. It's an interesting experience, especially for anybody who has issues with focus, who find that traditional meditation is hard, anybody with ADHD and trouble kind of sitting still in one spot. Get up and stand. You can do the grounding tree meditation while you're standing too. So you can always find ways that work for you. Now, another thing that is very good for the root is yoga. Now, yoga is good for all chakras, and these yoga postures are specifically designed to change energies in the body. So, Tadasana, which is standing mountain pose, it's just literally standing, really grounding your feet down. Kind of think about the three parts of your foot. I'm not going to lift my foot up, but on my hand, it would be like underneath your big toe, underneath your little toe, and then at the heel. And just really think about grounding both of your feet down into the earth and standing with a nice straight spine. Imagine there's a cord attached to the crown chakra that's kind of just pulling your head up. So you're very straight and erect and standing like that. That is very good for the root chakra. Now, if you know much about yoga, the chair posture is very good. Tree posture, tree pose, very, very good. Knees to chest, this is an easy one that anybody can do. It's called Apanasana, and it increases the downward flow of energy in the body. You just lay on the back, and then you just bring your knees up to your chest. You can wrap your arms around your shins if you want, or just draw your knees into your chest. Malasana, the yogic squat, it's a hard pose for many people, but if you do yoga and you know Malasana, that's a good one. And then Balasana is an easy one for many people. You just kneel down onto a mat and then just try to bring your forehead down to the mat as well. Now, speaking of, bringing the forehead down to the earth is a very grounding practice. So if you're feeling ungrounded, it's something you can think about. Like just lay down flat on the ground and then just bring your forehead down to the earth. And that can be very, very grounding, especially bringing the front of the body, grounding it down on the floor. Very good practice. Now, I mentioned that I would show you a few things that you can do, a few exercises. So let's just talk first about a breath that you can do that's very grounding. So one of the most grounding breaths of all is a breath where the inhale is shorter than the exhale. So what this does is it begins to lower our central nervous system, which gets kind of frenetic with energy. So if you notice you have a lot of anxiety, or you have a lot of worried thoughts or moving thoughts, and you're just trying to bring them down, take a few minutes and close your eyes. Just see if you can get into a slightly receptive space. It can be hard when you're anxious, but see if you can do it. And then from there, just begin to inhale for a count of 4, and then exhale for a count of 6 or 8. And you can play around with these numbers, but the important thing is that the inhale should be significantly shorter than the exhale. And when you do that, you breathe like that for a few minutes, you're going to find that you immediately can bring down your energy. I've tried this I've had a lot of dental issues through my life, and have had a lot of dental work done in the past 18 months. And some of it very painful and anxiety provoking. And this breath, it works wonders at the dentist when they're doing all their work on you. Just close your eyes and just try to have a significantly shorter inhale than exhale. And I like the pattern of 4 in and 8 out, but you can play around with those numbers. So you can try that. That's a great breath. Another great breath for grounding is the healing square breath. So during this breath, it's a counted breath. You count in for 4, you will hold the breath for 4, exhale for 4, and then hold the breath for 4. And then you would cycle through that for a couple of minutes. And that also is very good breath work to bring energy to the root chakras, help to ground and stabilize you. As far as mantra, I said I would mention a mantra. So there's 2 that I'd like to give you here. So one mantra is just simply a seed sound. And seed sounds are 1-syllable sounds that are connected to an energy. And so what they do is, like I mentioned, Sanskrit is a language that has meaning, but it also has vibration. It's unlike English or most of our native languages, which do not. They just have meaning. So what this means is that when you intone a sound in Sanskrit, you literally can change energy. You can change energy in your body. So the seed sound for the root chakra is lum. It's pronounced lum, like L-U-M, but it's actually spelled L-A-M. But the A is pronounced in Sanskrit, so lum. And so what you do is you just intone the sound lum, and try to make it kind of low in the body, not really high up in your head voice, but kind of low. And you can just close your eyes and inhale and then just intone that sound. Lum. And then you just do that. You can cycle through that for a couple of minutes, and that will really bring down energy as well. Now, a second mantra that I'd like to share with you is a mantra to Ganesha. And so what I mentioned earlier is that Ganesha is they say he resides in the root chakra of all people. So whether you believe in the god Ganesha or you work with him or not, you can still use this mantra. This mantra is also used to bring in, actually people use this to bring in abundance and prosperity, but also to bring in stability and security. And so this mantra is, and I will put it in the comments below after the video is over for anybody who wants to actually see the words. But the mantra goes, Om Gum Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gum Ganapataye Namaha. And you can sing it, you can chant it, you can just intone it, and it immediately brings in, it will stimulate the energy of the root, and it will also call on that deity too if you want to work with Ganesha. So great mantra, Om Gum Ganapataye Namaha. And then just to break it down, so what it basically means is Om is just a salutation. It's like saying hello, hello. Gum is the seed sound for Ganesha, so it's another sound. You can just intone the sound gum, and that immediately calls in the energy of Ganesha, the energy of the root chakra. Ganapataye is another name for Ganesha, Ganapatai. And then when you put the yay on the end of it, it's like saying, dear friend. So it's calling him in as a friend of ours. And then Namaha is just a way to say, I salute you, or I call you, I honor you. So that is a great mantra that you can use. Now, other things you can do, jumping up and down, kicking, stomping your feet, getting some movement going. If you're somebody who doesn't move a lot, try to move. I know that a lot of times there's physical disabilities or problems that make it so that it's hard for us to move, but we know, studies show that movement is a key to longevity. It doesn't mean you need to be climbing mountains or running marathons, but just getting out for some movement, even just walking a bit, can help. Massage, very, very good for the root chakra. If you can afford a massage, try to see if you can get one. Sometimes there's even massage schools which are a lot more affordable, where students are kind of learning the art of massage, and they're giving massages as part of their training. So you can always find things like that, perhaps. But you can also massage yourself. Just massaging the body, getting into the areas that need a little extra help. If you can invest in a shiatsu massage pillow, it's about $30 or $40 on Amazon, and that can give you a massage every single night. So things that work with the physical body will, in the tissue and everything, will help with your root. Okay, so the final thing I just want to mention here is that there is a deep connection between the root chakra and the third eye. And so when we want to open up our intuition, one of the best things that we can possibly do is work with the root chakra first. So many people, when they come to me and they say, I'm having trouble with my intuition, I'm having trouble connecting to the universe, I'm having trouble hearing my guides, my best advice I can ever give you is check out your root chakra. Even if you think it's okay, do some work on it, because of that intimate connection between the root and the third eye, we know that one affects the other. And so we really can't elevate unless we ground down and we have that firm foundation first. Okay, so I have a few questions here in the chat, and actually, let me see. I can't see any questions in the chat, but I have the feeling that there are some here. So what I'm going to do is I have a couple questions that people sent me, and I'm hoping that I can expand this chat a little bit to see what you guys are saying. Here I can see them. Okay. Great. Okay, so for anybody who's here live, welcome. And now I can actually see some of these questions. I see that Mary was saying she has some back issues, root disorder. Yeah, so I have very bad low back issues as well. So I know that's an issue of my root as well. Misty says she has degenerative disc disease, restless leg syndrome, random muscle twitches. Sometimes my hands shake violently when I'm holding my phone or a book. Are those root chakra issues as well? So those are potentially connected to the root chakra. Those sound like neurological issues too. So there's always like the physical component to it. So we never want to just simply address things through the energetic system. But I do think that the energetic working with the root chakra, I do think could help with some of those things, especially the restless leg syndrome. You know, the degenerative disc disease has a physical cause, but you can help soothe some of that through doing root chakra work. Um, your hands kind of shaking again it sounds neurological, but could be connected, like it's muscular, so can be connected to the root. So what I would say is try to do some extra root chakra work and see if any of those symptoms will calm down a bit, and you may find that is true. Um, let's see here. And then Lynn said back issues and just heard it again today. Yeah, it sucks. I have a lot of back issues. I fell out of a loft when I was like 19, and it really compromised my back, and I've had issues ever since. Root chakra work can absolutely help. I would suggest for anybody who's in an acute state of pain is trying some yin yoga with the root chakra. I mean, be very careful. You know, if you're in an acute state, talk to a doctor. Make sure you're cleared to do physical things. But if you are, root chakra yin yoga can be especially good for very low back pain. Melinda said it's very interesting to her, 3 of the 4 main deities that she feels have reached out to her correspond with the root. Yeah, it sounds like the root chakra is probably one to work on for sure. It's one to work on for a lot of people, so it doesn't surprise me. Okay, so you keep putting questions in the comments here. I am going to, I have 2 questions that were sent to me. I'm just going to read those, and then we'll see if anybody else has anything to ask. So Aislin has a really great question about meditation. So she said, do you feel like meditating before doing energy work or witchcraft in general helps make it more potent? So very, very good question. So yes, meditation is very valuable. The question is, where do we put it in our practice to get the most value out of it? And I don't really think there's a right or a wrong answer to this. So I'm just going to share a few of my thoughts. And now, in terms of energetic work and magical practice, you know, the question is really, when should we do it? And I think it's important for us to differentiate what are we talking about here. Like if we're talking about energetic work like chakra work, that might be different than we're doing a spell and we're projecting out energy. So it's kind of important for us to know, you know, what type of energy work are we talking about. Now, in our own coven, we have usually done, and this is like for years and years and years, we usually do our meditation after the center. The center would be where energy was raised or some kind of spell work was done. We typically do our meditation after the center, but before the divination. Now, we have occasionally done the meditation before we do the center. So before we do any of the magic or the spell work, we have done meditation before. And what that usually does is it creates a unique experience in the center of the circle. And it usually means that the people in the circle doing the work are a little bit more internally focused on the work. So if that's something that you want, the meditation actually can be good before the spell work, before the magical work. The other thing to think about is like when we're pairing it with energy work, like I said, it kind of depends on what the definition of energy work is. Are we talking about chakra work? Are we talking about breath work? You know, Kundalini energy exercises, or are we talking about like magic, like projection, things like that? Now, I personally, if I was doing energy work, I will personally do the meditation afterwards. And here's why. If we look at the 8 limbs of yoga, and by the way, yoga, we think about it in the West, we think yoga is just those asanas, that moving practice. But yoga is actually all of these practices: meditation, sensory deprivation, breath work. All of these things are all considered the pathway to yoga. Now, in the 8 limbs of yoga, which is a pathway, it starts in the beginning, and asana, which is the movement, is all the way in the very beginning. The meditation practice is near the end. It's the 7th limb of yoga. It's called dhyana, and it's done prior to the asana. I should say prior to doing the meditation in the 8 limbs of yoga, you would have already done asana. So you would already do all your movement. You would already do your pranayama, which is your breath work. You would do all of these things first, and then you would do your meditation. Now, the reason for that is because all of those practices are designed to get the person relaxed enough and receptive enough that they drop down into the subtle bodies more easily. They drop out of that physical body. They drop down through the energetic body and into the emotional and the mental bodies where real change can happen. And so this is why we would do things in the beginning, like the breath work and the energy work and all of that, to get us more receptive for the meditation. And then we find that messages are coming through more clearly from guides or deities or our higher self or wherever we're hoping to receive insight. So for that reason, I prefer meditation after doing the energy work. But like I said, I think like everything, at the end of the day, it's where do you feel meditation fits best in your practice? And wherever you feel it serves you best, that's the best place to put it. Okay, Caleb asked a question about the magical use of rings and where to wear them. And he asked, what hand should you wear rings on for various intentions? He said he knows through researching that the left is through receiving and the right is for projecting. But how do you know if the intention that you have is sending or receiving? So it's a good question. And there's not going to be a lot of agreement on this topic, which is why he's asking the question, because through research, it's a lot of confusion. Now, here's the reason why it's a lot of confusion. A lot of what you're going to read about rings and about hands is cultural. It's cultural. It's tied to the norms of society. So there are cultures where the left ring finger, you don't put anything on it. And yet in the West, this is where everybody puts the wedding ring. So it's not saying that that's bad to put the wedding ring on the left. It's just saying in different cultures, we look at the fingers in different ways. If you try to look at what planets are connected to each of your fingers, you're going to find 5 different correspondences online, because they're all tied to the different cultures and the different cultural norms of those cultures. So here would be, my best advice about the rings is, honestly, it's using your own intuition. Now, in general, we know that the right hand is more projecting. We know that the right side of the body is more projecting. And we know the left hand and the left side of the body is more receiving, right? So theoretically, anything that we want to draw in, we want to do it with the left. And anything we want to project out, we want to do it with the right. Now, when we're doing spells, that makes a lot of sense. So I do think too, is a lot of the things that we look up, especially if it's the advice is coming from the perspective of a witch, much of this information isn't really about what fingers to put rings on. It's more about how to hold the wand, or how to hold an athame, or how to project your energy out, do it on the right side, and how to bring it in from the left side. So people will try to kind of connect that to which hands to wear jewelry on. And I think that there's some truth to it. But again, because of the confusion of the different cultures, it all gets convoluted. So you asked about these intentions, and the specific ones you used were mostly ones that it seemed like things you wanted to draw in, because you mentioned relationships, money, intuition, psychic abilities, creativity. So one thing to think about is, do you want more of it? Well, that would be drawing in. So probably the left hand makes more sense if you want more of something. If you want less of something, probably the right hand makes sense. And I will tell you my own story is that I have this ring that is onyx. It's an onyx dark moon ring. And I did this in a spell that was basically to let go of negative energy, basically shield me from negative energy. And I'm wearing it on my right hand. Now, I didn't put it on my right hand because I wanted to get rid of negative energy, but it makes sense to have it on the hand that's more releasing. I put it on this finger because it fit on this finger best. And so that is my best advice for people, is when you're trying to figure out where to wear jewelry, be drawn to the place where it naturally fits. It doesn't feel the same when I put it on the left hand. It feels odd. It doesn't fit that finger. People's fingers tend to be different shapes on the different sides. So that is why my best advice is use your intuition. But I think that for most of what you've asked about, those intentions seem like they are drawing in. And therefore, if you want to choose between left and right, I would probably go with left for all those intentions that you asked about. Okay, and if you have any follow-up questions on that one, or I didn't really get to the root of the question, let me know. And then Misty has a question here in the chat. She says, I have a question, but I'm not sure what it would be related to. However, I have a hard time remembering my dreams. For someone who has asthma and COPD, is it safe to drink mugwort before bed with that, or would it cause problems with breathing? That is a question for an herbalist, probably. In mugwort, you should be very careful about taking mugwort in internally anyway. I would recommend, if you can get a mugwort, put a mugwort like sachet under your pillow or right near your pillow. Or there's sprays that you can get that have mugwort in them. Or you can even get herbal sticks, like a sage stick, but it's made out of mugwort. And you could burn that around your bed before you sleep. Though with your COPD and asthma, it depends on how you tolerate like incense or smoke like that. But I would probably try to ask an herbalist how mugwort would affect a person with asthma or COPD. I have asthma. I've never internally taken mugwort, so I don't know. But what I do know about mugwort is that it's not a lot different than some of these other herbs like valerian, things like that. And as far as I know, there's no counterindication for asthma and COPD and valerian. But I would probably ask that question to an herbalist. But to just get around even having to take it internally, there's a lot of ways that you can have the mugwort near you externally as well. All right, I hope that helps. And below, when I get off of here too, I'll drop a link below where I found a place that's selling mugwort herbal sticks that I've been meaning to get one for myself too, but you might want to try that if you're into that. All right, so any more questions, put them in the chat. If I missed anything, I'll be going back in here later on and I will answer anything I missed. And, oh, Misty said she has witch's ointment with mugwort in it, but it also has belladonna. Yeah, so you might want to, just get something with mugwort so that you can experiment with just that. I'll put the link for the stick down in here. All right, if I missed anybody's questions, I will, like I said, I'll get those later. I'll go back into the chat and get those. And next week, we'll either be continuing the chakra system by talking about the sacral chakra, or we might actually just pair this video with earth element next week and talk a little bit about the earth element. And then I also have a good shadow work video coming up for us in a couple of weeks as well. All right, well, I hope that you enjoyed tonight, and if anybody has any questions afterwards, let me know. You can reach out to me, aislinlumina@bodymindwitchcraft.com, or just leave a comment below, and I hope you have a great rest of your night. Until next time, blessed be.